Game dev versus DEI. My experience with DEI in the gaming industry. Yeah, I'll watch it. All right, what was this? He's a dev? Yeah.
In the United States, an executive order was made to dismantle DEI programs within federal government and encourage private sectors to end these initiatives.
Okay.
I'm a game developer and I want to share my insights on DEI in the game industry. First, I want to go over an article that covers diversity data collected by GDC. After that, I want to share my experience with the DEIB initiative at one of the companies I was working at. For those of you new here, my name is Mustafa. I am the solo developer of the indie studio that I founded, Suburb Path. In the
Nice.
past, I've worked at Treyarch during the development of Black Ops
Ooh.
4, and I've worked at Zwift, which is an indoor cycling game. Right now, I develop and publish small games on Steam, such as Nexus Defenders, which is a narrative-driven tower defense game, and Beware Tomorrow, which is currently in development, a first-person stealth horror game.
Cool.
So first I want to go over this article real quick that was published by thegamer.com very recently. They're announcing survey data that GDC, Game Developers Conference, has compiled.
Okay.
The main takeaways of this article are that males made 75% of developers in 2020 within the game industry,
Yeah.
and in 2024 it dropped down to 66%. But 33% are women plus non-binary. This article also states that around 1/4 of game developers identify
That's
as
kind of a huge shift. To go from 24 to 32%, that's an 8% change in 2 years. That is insane.
LGBT plus. Another point that it focuses on is that 43%, so very close to 50% of all game developers between age 18 and 24, so Gen Z who are just coming
Yeah.
straight out of college, identify as LGBT plus. The point that this article brings up about
Wait, what?
18 and to 50% of that 43%, so very close to 50% of all game developers between age 18 and 24, so Gen Z who are just coming straight out of college, identify as LGBT plus. The point that this article brings up about women
I mean, I don't see how you can look at a spread like that and not think that this was somehow manufactured. That's crazy. That is a crazy skew, because I'm pretty sure that like an average, like that's at least double, right? If not triple the average of even people that age.
and non-binary people making 32% of the game industry.
And I also want to draw a distinction here, because we're going to start this video out. I mean, obviously, there's going to be a lot of conversation. I think it's inconsequential whether somebody's gay or not. You know, that Tim guy that we watch, sometimes he made Fallout. I think he's gay, right? So this whole idea that being gay matters, no, it doesn't. Nobody actually cares about this. The conversation about this is about how you're adding people into the pool of developers through artificial means. So the amount of women that are game devs is inconsequential. It doesn't matter. Like, I think that people don't care. Like, you know, for example, Shadowbringers for Final Fantasy XIV, I didn't play it. I get reminded about that every week. But I didn't play it. I've heard, though, that it was one of the best stories, and that was written primarily by a woman. And so this idea that, like, the demographics are somehow indicative of content, or like women making games is bad, I think that's very one-dimensional. But the conversation here is about these percentages, the disparity between these percentages and the average population, and what the implication of that disparity is and how that disparity occurred. Just so you guys can understand where I'm coming from here. Freeren's written by a woman and its peak. Yeah. And so it's just, that's not how I see things at all. I just want to make sure that we contextualize this, because I know that a lot of people are going to, like, you know, I've seen, like, because people tagged me in this article and they've been like, oh, well, that explains it. I think in a way that's true, but not because of the fact that they have an identity group, but because of the fact that they're hiring based off of the identity group.
I don't want to analyze this number because once they clumped non-binary with women, the number means nothing.
No, who the fuck is non-binary? It's like a fraction of a percent of people. It's nothing. I think it's like so minimal.
Non-binary means nothing. It's just like that career fair that happened a couple years ago that was supposed to be for women and non-binary people, and then a bunch of men showed up
And said they were
stating that
non-binary.
they are non-binary, so they were allowed in. So the term non-binary means absolutely nothing. You just state it and you are. With the fact that they are clumping non-binary with women, that also means that they are including trans women. It's 32% of women plus men who want to state that there's something other than a man. So this statistic, it means nothing. I'm just going to move on. So the biggest two statistics within this article to point at are these two right here, that 24% of game developers identify as LGBT plus, and then 43% age 18 to 24 identify that as well. The main point that we can tie with this is when we look at how many people identify as that in total in the United States. They make up 7.2% of the United States, but yet they make up 24%, almost a quarter.
See, I don't understand this. I feel like this is kind of like a forbidden topic. But like, how is it that Gen Z identifies as LGBT at 19%, but Gen X identifies at 3%? Because somebody's got to be lying, right? I mean, it's either that or Alex Jones was right. Like, I mean, that's the way I see it. Indoctrination? I mean, I don't know. Like, do you think it's really indoctrination? Because I don't think I could be indoctrinated to like sucking dicks. If I could, I would have indoctrinated myself. You can? Well, maybe I need to try harder.
Of the entire gaming industry. Nearly 20%, around a fifth of Gen Z identify as this, but almost half of game developers
That's a double.
who are within Gen Z identify as this. So what you're
To
telling me,
be
if you,
fair, Gen Z ends at 27. This is a minor, completely fucking irrelevant conversation. But Gen Z begins at 1997 or 98. And 24, you would have to have been born in 2000. So there's a 3-year overlap. So you could assume that if this trend was continuing, it would probably go even higher. But yeah.
you take the 10 of the best and brightest
in the
game
water.
developers who are Gen Z.
The fluoride
6
is
of them are
making people
straight,
gay.
and 4 of them are LGBT plus. I don't buy that. I feel like that this clearly indicates that these numbers are manufactured due to the hiring processes checking off boxes. And
I think that you could logically, like, I agree with this guy. Like, if you see this big of a disparity, and then you have them outwardly stating we're trying to hire people based off of these identity traits, it seems pretty obvious that that's what's happening, right? Or that that's what was happening. How could you not come to that conclusion? Yeah, get any advantage that you can. Yeah, exactly. There's more awareness for LGBT over the past 2 decades. Baby boomers were literally lynched for being trans. I don't think that people were lynched for, I'm sure it happened, right? But like to say that this was like common practice for being trans, I think getting beat up, yeah, probably, sure. But like lynched, I don't know about that. I mean, again, you could be right. I just never heard that. It sounds pretty extreme. I wouldn't believe that without a lot of evidence. But anyway, the point is that that's a good point. And what you're saying is probably true to an extent, is that, but like, I didn't say baby boomers, did I? I said Gen X. I think that Gen X grew up in a time where, you know, it was basically, you know, don't ask, don't tell, where it's like you can be gay, but maybe don't necessarily talk about it a lot. I don't know. I think it's probably both. If you want me to be honest, I think it's probably both things that are happening at the same time.
They're checking off very specific
Because like
boxes.
your
Someone's
point is
race
clearly
and
accurate.
who they sleep
Like
with
100%
have
you're right about
nothing
this.
to do with whether they should qualify for the job or not. In fact, these statistics and also the fact that the gamer is celebrating this article as if it's a good thing proves that this is an agenda that they've been trying to push. But then once you point out that it's an agenda, they say, what agenda? There is no agenda. We're just trying to get representation and equality. We want fair opportunities for all game developers. If it's fair, then how come 7% of the population are getting a better chance into the game industry than the other 93%?
It seems pretty obvious that that's what's happening. Yeah, obviously.
Point that I want to cover about this article is that a lot of people are saying this is proof that's not merit-based. Yes, I agree. I'm probably going to be one of the few people that
It's not proof, but it's evidence, I think. When you see a disparity that's that big, like a 2x disparity, you know.
You'll find on here that's going to have a differing opinion. I do agree merit is important. The person's achievements, their skills, their work history, yes, it is very important. But I don't believe that merit is the only factor that is important when hiring somebody. I do believe in hiring based on team synergy, hiring based on rapport, relationship-based hiring. For example, one of my former coworkers, we've worked together for a really long time. If I have an opening on my team and my former coworker has the basic skills for that opening, I would offer him that opening because I know we both work really well together. We have a history together.
I think that that isn't really what people mean by merit. And I think that what he's bringing up is like nepotism or like the implication of it. I think that nepotism is like whenever you hire your son. And hiring from within or hiring through connections is a totally different situation. Yeah, that's more like knowledge of merit. Exactly. And I would say that the way that you work with other people and the ability for you to interact with them in a way that's productive and healthy, that does matter a lot. It makes a huge difference. So, I mean, I would include that into merit. So basically, I think that when people consider something as non-merit based, what they mean is that this is an action or a trait that doesn't have any real perspective, or it doesn't change what this person can do for their job. Like, for example, like if you're gay, you can still make a hamburger, right? If you're a woman, you can still make a hamburger, theoretically, if you're working at McDonald's. So, that's really what people are discussing is like immutable traits that don't have any relation to the nuance of the job. Not necessarily somebody's ability to get along. Because what he's saying is that somebody's people skills and social skills, those things do matter a lot. And he's right. And anybody who's worked anywhere would know that. Or anybody who's even been in a group environment anywhere would know that. Of course it matters.
We've worked well together. I know that he's a hard worker. He might not be the most skilled person. He might not have the best technical skills. But I know we have good synergy. I know he's a trustworthy person. And also, I believe that showing the potential to learn skills is also important. So while someone might not have the best merit on paper, I don't think merit is always the most important thing. Again.
Yeah, he's right. The way that a person acts, the way that they behave, the way they communicate, the way that they get along with other people, all of that matters. He's completely right.
And I'm not saying merit is worthless. I'm not saying it is not important. I'm just saying it's not always the most important thing. I joined Zwift back in 2019. Okay. And they're an indoor cycling company. Shortly after I joined, they started the DEIB initiative, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging.
It's very obvious that teamwork inside of a specific group is merit. Yeah, exactly. But like what he's saying is that there are intangible qualities that a person can have that are external from just like straight functional benefits that play into the hiring process. Anybody would know that. Absolutely. Of course.
After the 2020 lockdown started and we were all sent to work from home, We were assigned to start taking these
Junk, thanks for 10 subs.
DEIB courses. And these courses were mandatory. This was one course that would educate us about our internal bias. For example, if we're hiring somebody and the person looks like us, we might be more lenient towards them. But if the person looks a little different, we might be a little bit more strict with the requirements for the position.
Yeah.
And we might not hire them for that. And I can't remember if it was this specific course or if it was another course.
I'm sure there's a lot of soft biases like that happen. They're obviously bad, and it's fundamentally discrimination. So anytime that happens, it's a bad thing.
Call one of them that I had to watch, which was about the platinum rule.
Yes, right. Yeah.
Now, we know the golden rule. The golden rule is to treat others how we want to be treated. And I believe in that rule. Treat people with respect to a degree. Now, the platinum rule, on the other hand, is treat people how they want to be treated. So in this video, we were taught that we're supposed to introduce ourselves with our pronouns and then ask the person, hey, what do you want to be called? What are your preferred pronouns? How do you want to be treated?
I don't understand the logic of that, is because some people don't like pronouns. So if you presume that they like pronouns, aren't you treating them the way that you want them to be treated? This is the logic. This is where logic like this immediately falls apart, is because most people, I would say like 95% of people, probably go by the pronouns that they are assigned by their assigned gender, right? And so what is the logic in asking a person for something that 95% of people don't use in natural conversation? And this is the issue that I think a lot of this kind of stuff has, is that upon any sort of logical inspection, it immediately falls apart. And it's not that, like, I mean, you guys know that I'm not against, like, if somebody's transsexual and they look like a woman, I'll say she. Absolutely. I would just naturally say that because it looks like a she. Duh. Like, of course. And if they don't like that, they want me to say him, like, okay, I'll try to do that. But I would lead with assuming what that is, right? And I think that that's the polite, reasonable thing to do. Junkman, thanks for 50 subs. I appreciate it. Holy shit. So that's where I'm at.
Those were very frustrating to watch because it is social reprogramming. It is teaching us to act in a different way that is not the norm in our culture or any culture. Hey, thanks for sticking around with the video. I'm going to give a really brief interruption real quick. If you don't want to hear it, you can skip forward a little bit. I have timestamps in all my videos. My next game, Beware Tomorrow, it's been delayed, but it should be coming out in the coming months very soon. It is a first-person stealth horror game, has puzzle elements to it. You are locked in the facility with a deranged man who's hunting you down.
I'll allow it. I mean, people have in-video ads all the time. It's an in-video ad for his own game.
And you have to solve puzzles to escape the facility. There's no DEI in the game. You don't have to worry about misgendering anybody. You won't be lectured to pull a barv. And if this game sounds interesting to you, link is in the description below. Wishlist it on Steam, and I'll let you guys know once I have a release date. Aside from having these LinkedIn learning courses, we also had these Zoom webinars with the DEIB department.
You know what I feel like this is? I feel like these are people who are looking for reasons to not fire them. And so these people create problems, and they create, like, I felt this way. So you guys, I've said this before, but I don't really talk about it a whole lot. Before I was doing YouTube videos, I was going to college for an advanced degree in computer information systems, which was a subset of a business degree. And so I was in business school, basically. And I had to take classes like, you take like marketing, like 301 or something like that. And you're in an auditorium and there's like 150 other people there. And I remember, like, in marketing class, I was thinking to myself, all of this is totally made up. None of this curriculum is real. It's just people that made up a bunch of vocabulary so they can sell a course. This isn't how to market. This isn't how you go about any of this. It's all a waste of, everybody's wasting their time here. This is all bullshit. And so when I came to that realization, I felt a lot better about dropping out, right? And so marketing was worse. It was. But like what my point is that like that was my wake up call to people that create a problem and then solve the problem. They basically, they start with the solution and they work backwards to create the problem. And I think that's what these people
was
do.
very lazy. They pulled up this video from YouTube and started playing it. 5 tips on being a better ally.
Yeah.
Before I realized these webinars were not mandatory, I was attending these webinars because I thought I was supposed to. One of the earlier webinars, the topic was know your privilege. It was for us to understand that our coworkers might not have lived as privileged of a life as we have. This webinar literally promoted prejudice by default.
I think that's exactly what this is. I think that 95% of this is just straight up promoting prejudice and discrimination. And I don't even think it's 95%. It's more like 99. I think that there are like very narrow like instances where things that are DEI initiatives could actually have a positive benefit and could be, uplifting in a way. But in almost all of these circumstances, I feel like they're just people that are really just bigoted and discriminatory that want to canonize that into the rules.
When I look at my coworkers, I assume they are just as educated as me, maybe even more educated depending on their position. And whatever challenges in life they had, it shouldn't matter because everybody has challenges in their life. As a Muslim, I believe that every single person is tested and challenged. We all have tests and challenges that vary according to our capability. Some people's challenges are more difficult than others, but the reason why those people's challenges are more difficult is because those people are stronger and are capable of taking on those challenges. The larger the challenge, the more we grow once we get through those challenges.
Sure, yeah.
And that's what I believe in. I should not look at my coworker and say, okay, this guy's black, he must be uneducated, and he grew up in the ghetto.
Yeah.
That is literally
racist
for me to look down on him and think that. Victim Olympics is not...
It's oppression Olympic stereotyping. What they're doing is they're creating reverse stereotypes, and then they're turning it into the policy.
Not a productive conversation to have. I'm Arab. The FBI tapped my phone in the early 2000s. Patriot Act. I had it rough. Victim Olympics and trying to see who had it worse is not a productive conversation. So whichever end it is, whether it is to make myself feel higher and mighty than other people and look down at those who have it worse than me, that itself is racist. But then the other way around, get myself on the bottom of the totem pole, that's a victim mentality. And that's a terrible mindset to embrace. So both ends of the spectrum are terrible. We all have challenges, but at the same time, we all have things that we can be.
Each person is an individual, and whenever you attribute somebody's individual lived experience to the experience average of a group, you are dehumanizing that person, and you're treating them with disrespect. I think that you should treat everybody the way that you want to be treated and be respectful with them and approach them in good faith. And if you do that, you're never going to have any problems with anybody. Like that, it's never. You're like maybe there's going to be a crazy person twice in your life that this is an issue with. Other than that, you're never going to have this issue.
Grateful for. What was very bizarre about this Know Your Privilege webinar, some of the employees were so brainwashed that they wanted to sacrifice themselves in front of the altar. There was a good number of people who raised their hand on Zoom, then they got the chance to speak, and then they started saying, I understand I'm privileged in this and privileged in that, and they were basically spilling their white guilt. Like I said before, this promotes the mentality.
And the problem is that there's an element of truth to this, like, in the way that, for example, like slavery was affected and how people, obviously, like, civil rights weren't really that long ago. And so there are instances of this being legitimate, right? But the problem is that you can't apply a historical context to a modern person and say you have to live based off of what happened 70 years ago. That's the problem that I think a lot of these people are having, and that's where the disconnect comes in. It's that people constantly want everybody to live in the context of events that they were not even alive for. And I think that really it's basically, it's like I'm trying to think of the right way to say this. It's basically original sin, right? It's a non-religious version of original sin. And I think it's disgusting. I do. And I feel like it's also corrosive. It's negative. And I think that it's not productive. It doesn't make anything better. It doesn't improve anybody's awareness. All it does is just hurt everything. So how can you ever move on based off that way of thinking? You can't. You never can. And these people, well, here's what my point is. These people, their existence and their job is predicated on you not moving on. It's predicated on you constantly thinking about these things because that's the way they sell more webinars. That's the way they sell consulting. So they basically create this issue and they proliferate it as much as they possibly can, and then they sell themselves as the solution to the issue. So that's basically why this is happening, because there are a lot of privileges, like, for example, generational wealth. Very few people are privileged of generational wealth, but I think that on average, it's probably going to be more white people because of the effects of civil rights and previously slavery. I think this is a very reasonable take to have, and anybody could see things this way. You could look at the ability to speak English in the same way. You can look at the ability of having two parents that are at home the same way. All of these things are accurate, and they are privileges. But just because somebody has a privilege doesn't necessarily mean anything. And everybody has a completely unique set of privileges and advantages that's different than anybody else. So again, whenever you try to create these categories for people, all this is basically you're just doing a lot of extra work so you don't actually have to have any conversations and you don't have to have any interpersonal skills. You can just categorize everybody as some different group and then just treat them based off of that. Spawn points matter. Yeah, I mean, every single person in this chat is more privileged than some kid that's working in the cobalt mine making the new Samsung phone. We are way more privileged than they are. And, again, we are so lucky. I think over 1 billion people in the world still don't have access to the internet. We have a tremendous advantage over those people. And so it's not wrong to say that we have privilege, but it is wrong to treat that privilege like an original sin that you have to overcome.
Of racism to make them think that they are better than other people.
Yeah.
No one is born better than anybody else.
I disagree. I think that tons of people are born with tremendous advantages that other people don't have. I think that if two people spawn in, one guy spawns in and he's 6'5", and the other guy spawns in and he's 5'5", the guy that's 6'5" has an advantage over the guy that's 5'5". That's just the way it is. Genetics play a big role. The way that a person's appearance is. Some people are just naturally more attractive than others. And of course, there's an element of, nature and nurture, but nature is a big factor. And just because that exists doesn't mean that you should treat those people they're any better or worse or anything. It's just RNG. I don't see why. I feel like, growing up, this is the way that I've always saw things, is that you treat people based off of the content of their character. You treat people how you would want to be treated, and you're polite and respectful, and that's it. All of this bullshit, these are people reinventing the wheel, and it doesn't roll very well.
Finally, I want to cover the DEIB department's initiative to gaslight us on transgenderism. Let me explain the Zwift game real quick. Zwift is an indoor cycling game. One aspect of the game is the experience points and the unlock system. You gain experience points according to the distance. You can use those experience points to unlock things from the store, such as different bikes and accessories for your character. With that said, whether you choose a male or a female avatar, the amount of experience points you gain is different. The developers took an account for the fact that women ride less distance than men.
I wonder
this is
why.
Because on average, women, they have less power and cadence.
If you want my honest opinion, I think that inside of video games, making male and female characters with absolute parity, making them have the exact same stats, I think that it's totally fine and it's okay, because it's basically, in a lot of cases, just a cosmetic decision that a player is taking. But of course, it's not realistic. It's a skin. Yeah, it's basically a skin. Zwift is a competitive game. Well, I don't think that really matters. So like it's like I think in video games having equality where it's like the female character does as much damage as the male character in melee attacks, this is clearly unrealistic. But certain things just serve the game functions better if they work that way for the player enjoyment. I don't know if this game is a category of that or not, but that's the way that I see it.
They ride slower than men. And because they ride slower, within the same time frame, they don't ride as far. To make
Sure.
it more enticing for women, women have an experience point boost
Okay.
to make up for their lack of power. In addition to women having an experience points boost, there are also different online events such as races for people to join. There are also some races that are exclusive for women. So with that said,
I think that's totally fine, by the way. Like there's a reason why we have women only sports. It's because women are weaker and smaller than men. So if you have men that are competing in women's sports, men are always going to win, and then the women are never going to win. So I think that's the reason why it's biology, right? I mean that's just the way it is. Like even of same weight and everything, the male is going to come out ahead. The experience boost is kind of weird. The only thing that's weird about it is that you have male and female characters that are competing on the same vectors. I don't think that you should be putting them on the same leaderboard because you can never artificially fix that disparity, because every single attempt to do so is just creating an equal and opposite disparity that also doesn't affect everybody equally either. The best way to do it is to separate them. And that's the way that all sports work. There's a reason for that.
Game acknowledges there's a biological difference between men and women. That's why there are exclusive races for women, and that's why women gain experience points
Fucking exactly.
faster than men to make up for their lack of speed and inability to ride as far. Even though the game acknowledges these differences, therefore the company acknowledges these differences, the company also tried to gaslight us that there is no difference between a woman and a trans woman. I can't recall who this guest speaker was, but they brought in a guest speaker from a third-party organization. And at the end of this webinar, she was I recall one employee asking if there is any sort of physical advantage for a trans woman to compete in women's sports. This guest speaker, she straight up said that there's lots of misinformation being spread about the advantages of trans women competing against
she's the one spreading it.
Women, and that there are no differences.
Yeah.
This is just a flat out lie.
That's where it's
so in
coming
2018 in Connecticut, there was these two high school teenagers who competed in the girls track and field, and these two transgender teenagers, Terry Miller and
Look, one of the greatest tennis players of all time, I think it's Serena Williams, she said flat out, men are better and faster and stronger in tennis, and she was glad to not have to play against men. Like, if you have people that are at the absolute pinnacle, like, she's a generational athlete. Like, make no mistake.
Andrea Yearwood,
like, I mean, if she's saying it, I'd listen to her. Let's be fucking honest here. Who are we going to listen to? Are we going to listen to an activist, or are we going to listen to a world champion?
both like blew away the competition and broke all the girls' records for the 100-meter dash. This was a pretty big thing in the news at the time. I can't remember which one it was, whether it was Terry or Andrea. I think it was Andrea, but Andrea was asked to be a guest speaker with our company in 2020 to talk about transgender rights in sports. I didn't attend this webinar at all, so I don't know how it went. But again, the company acknowledges that there's a biological difference between men and women, but then brings on individuals like Andrea over here to promote transgender individuals to compete against women. Imagine a world where a company hires a full-time pest control associate for their company. This person's job is to make sure that all the pests, whether bugs, rodents, whatever, all the pests have to be cleared out of the building. And the moment that the person no longer has work to do, the company will have to let go of this position and lay off the full-time pest control associate. It's in that pest control associate's best interest to keep their job.
Perfect analogy. Absolutely. 100%. There you go. Big analogy.
Are they going to get rid of all
Real
the pests? No, they're going to keep some pests. In fact, they might even add more pests into the building so that they keep
got some centipedes in here now.
This is what
Oh,
DEI
shit.
is like. DEI is a scam. They need hatred to exist for their job to be stable. If a company
It's also a very good point that he's saying.
has an issue with discrimination, they would bring in an expert, like do a little bit of training, then the expert moves on and leaves. Just like pest control. Pest control comes in, does their job, goes out. But that's not how it is. DEI is a permanent position. For their position to stay relevant, they need people to be riled up and divided.
Yeah,
And
they can never solve the problem, because if they do, then they create their own irrelevance and they want to maintain their job. So they have to keep finding new problems. This is, it's common sense logic. Yeah, of course.
that's what DEI does. It promotes prejudice. They want people to look at someone of different race and have prejudices of that person. They want sexual identity to be important so that it becomes a qualifier for hiring practices.
Yeah.
This is a small bit of my experience with DEI. Honestly, this was a very frustrating video for me to record. It's actually very frustrating for me to recall these experiences, but I feel like it's important for me to share this experience. Most people who work
I think that if Elon Musk did Nazi salutes every single fucking day, they still wouldn't radicalize as many people as stuff like this does. That's what I think. I think this is what really, really radicalizes people. And I think it's been happening on such a systematic level for years. That's why you're seeing such a pushback for it.
game industry and
This is a really good
who
video.
go through these DEI or DEIB trainings, they don't speak out about it. And I think it's important to speak out because it promotes racism. It promotes looking down upon people. It promotes victim mindset. It promotes victim Olympics. It's a scam.
Yeah.
And I really hope that it gets eradicated from the gaming industry. Anyways, if you got this far, I appreciate you, and it would help the algorithm if you give the video a thumbs up. If you didn't like anything that I said, give it a thumbs
he's
down
right.
as well. Tell me in the comments section below, do you have any experience with DEI initiatives at any company that you worked at? I want to hear about it.
Yeah, this
Don't
is-
forget to
this
hit
is
the
a lot
bell
better than
so
I
you
thought
can
it was
get
gonna be.
notifications on when I release a new video. And I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. This is a platform for me to talk
Wow, it highlights. Yeah, I'll subscribe. This is a good one.
about my opinions, my insights, and my experiences
good video.
on the game industry, as well. Talk about
He's only got
game
2,000
design,
subscribers.
character design, storytelling, and also it's a platform for me to share about my projects that I'm working on. Thanks again for watching. Take care. Salam.
I think that was a really good video. I think the guy was very reasonable. I think he came up with a lot of good points, and especially for a person, he's only got 2,000 subscribers. I think he structured this video really well, and I think it's great. So there's the video. Give it a like if you liked it. Yeah, I totally thought it was great. And so, yeah, it's that simple. As a trans person, I'm honestly sick of DEI nonsense. I'm taught to respect everyone, no matter what they look like. Yeah, no, I think that most people, like, I don't even think that, I think this is the perspective that most people have, even with things like trans, is that trans is probably the most contentious of these, like, social issues. But most people probably don't even give a fuck about that as long as they don't have to hear about it constantly, right? And I don't even think that that's something that's necessarily like some sort of don't tell me about it because I don't like it. It's more like people just don't want to hear about it in general. So as long as you keep your personal life to yourself, then, I mean, really, you're not going to have any problems. It's not that hard. And that's the way I see it. I don't want to hear about hetero people. Well, I think that like talking a lot about like sexual relationships and sexuality in a workplace is, I mean, I think this is generally kind of like a no-no, right? So I don't really see how there's a lot of conversation about it being good. Yeah, it's that's already a no-no. So I don't think we need to introduce new issues, right? This is just basically the same policy applied to different people. So yeah, same with religion, politics, etc. Right? Yeah, definitely. It just might be unprofessional. Yeah. So there's the video right there, and it's that simple. I feel like it was a really good video, and I'm surprised. I didn't expect it to be nearly as good as it was.